Global change factor. That's the next one I'm doing.
Whoa, no.
All right, so this is 10 to 15% of the APES exam. I went through the first part fast. I'm going to go through this faster. The rest of the stuff I'm giving you today and the next time are all specific topics. So I've broken it down into those 7 areas. So the actual test taking tips and the way to take the test I just gave you. So this is actual content. From here on out, you're getting content. All right. All right, global warming versus ozone hole. That's something that a lot of people get mixed up on. 75% of students don't know the difference. So that's why I gave you this stuff specifically. So, yeah.
Can I take a picture of him?
You got it.
You have it right there in front of you.
Right.
Well, yeah, but it's...
See, it is
no.
It's
No. It's kind of small.
Tell him no. It's colorful.
If you want to,
So it's the same thing.
Alright,
okay, guys, put down.
Alright, so these are the 2 most tested and most important concepts you need to understand APES. Only about 15% of the students actually know the difference. So they're not related. There's a small part that makes them related, but for all intents and purposes, and for you guys, they're not related. Alright, so global warming first. This is a simple explanation because it can be complicated. This is a picture. The sun sends its energy to the earth. The heat gets trapped in there, and it makes the place warmer. That's basically what's happening.
It's not as clear in the
Look at the detail he's adding to those photos.
All right, so global warming is a result of the greenhouse effect. So this is what they think causes this. So it's the phenomenon whereby the Earth's atmosphere traps solar radiation caused by the presence in the atmosphere of gases such as carbon dioxide. Water vapor is a greenhouse gas. Methane is a greenhouse gas. That's what you fart or belch or anytime you have waste being decomposed, that's methane. So basically what happens is it allows the sunlight to come through and it absorbs the heat and keeps the heat, it's like a blanket, keeps the heat around the Earth. So the greenhouse effect is used to explain global warming and the effects of global warming. So that's what the greenhouse effect explains global warming. It's the theory of why it's a hypothesis of why global warming happens. And it's important to be aware, the way that most environmental teachers tell you, and the way that all the videos tell you, and the way that everything tells you, is that global warming is caused by the greenhouse effect. And they state it as a fact. When in reality, it's just the best hypothesis or best explanation we can come up with. It hasn't been proven. It's just most likely. So it's a hypothesis. It's not a theory. So it's still not a theory yet. And remember, a theory means that it's like definite. So the theory of relativity, the theory, that's a law of gravity. But theories mean they're pretty much the answer. So this is still in the hypothesis stage. So the greenhouse effect causing global warming is still a hypothesis. It's the most likely explanation, but it's not 100%. There's still a lot of doubt. Yep.
But the melting of the ice caps, wouldn't you say that considering the actual like the composition of the actual atmosphere, that's the only really
well, I agree with this. I'm just letting you know that there is doubt and that people can argue against it and debate against it with good enough evidence that you can say it's not 100% true. But we're not going to get into the debate. I agree that this is the reason why, but I'm just telling you that there's doubt, and they may ask you to look at the opposing point of view. So a greenhouse. I realized about 2 or 3 years ago that because we live in South Florida, a lot of people who haven't been up north don't know what a greenhouse is. So the idea of greenhouse gases doesn't make sense. So you need to know what a greenhouse is. So a greenhouse is a structure people use in the north during winter to keep their young plants from freezing. A greenhouse allows sunlight and heat from the sun into the structure while blocking the cold air, should be out. Think of your car. When you get to the car in the afternoon, the car's a lot hotter than the air. That's the greenhouse effect. That's your car with the glass is basically like a greenhouse. The heat goes in and it can't go out. So plants are protected by the greenhouse, stay warm and receive sunlight for photosynthesis while blocking out the cold of the winter. That's what a personal home greenhouse looks like.
So pretty.
It's usually made out of glass or plastic. This thing's kept closed in the winter so it doesn't get cold. Allows the sunlight to go through, heat up, and plants live. They don't get, if they get frostbitten, then they usually die if they're young. So global warming. These are steps. Number one, anthropogenic greenhouse gases. That's the formal name of greenhouse gases. Anthropogenic means human-made or man-made. Or humans increase the amount of. All right, combustion or burning. That's the man-made way humans contribute to the greenhouse effect. Respiration is the natural process that contributes to the greenhouse effect. So when we breathe out, we're contributing to the greenhouse effect. When animals breathe out, they're contributing to the greenhouse effect. When things burn, that's also contributing to the greenhouse effect. So greenhouse gases hover within the troposphere, the part we're in. That's the layer of atmosphere we are. We're in that layer. So the layer of atmosphere closest to Earth, where it insulates the world and keeps the temperature extremes like those other planets. So if we didn't have those greenhouse gases, we'd be like Mars. If we have too many greenhouse gases, we'd be like Venus. Venus is very hot. It's got a lot of greenhouse gases. It's got a huge atmosphere, and it's locked in all that heat. Whereas Mars doesn't really have an atmosphere. And it's either hot if you're on the sunny side, or it's really cold if you're on the dark side. So we have to have those greenhouse gases to keep us at a normal temperature. So they are good. We need to have them. If we don't have them, then we're going to freeze to death. All right, so here are the main greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide, it comes from respiration and combustion. It's both natural and man-made, and it's the major greenhouse gas. When I talk about greenhouse gases, this is the one that I'm thinking of, carbon dioxide.
The main one.
This is the big one. Water vapor, that's a greenhouse gas. It's a product of respiration. It's natural for the most part. Water's a good thing, except if there's too much in the atmosphere, then notice when it gets hot out and there's a lot of humidity in the air, it's hotter, like right now, not in here, out there. It's the temperature may be like in the upper 70s, but it feels like it's 90 because there's a lot of water vapor in the air. That's the greenhouse effect. Methane. It comes from decomposing organic material and digestion. It's natural. This is the main gas produced by your large intestines and is released during flatulence. Yeah.
But many scientists actually do believe that after the agricultural revolution and the beginning of the raising livestock, the number of cattle increased, and that this could be considered man-made since we raised these cows that were producing much more methane than they would have produced otherwise. They would otherwise produce. So couldn't we say that it's actually both?
The increase is both. But where it comes from, it's not like we mix something together and boom, it's made. The cows are naturally made. We just happen to have more cows.
So we breed them.
So it's natural. See what I'm saying? If there's more dead things or more cows, or people are farting more or something, it's still a natural source. It's just they're doing it more, so you're adding more. So the source is natural. It's not artificial.
The cow is domesticated.
Yeah, but it's still a natural thing. We're not going to debate right now. And then there's nitrous oxide, which is a product of fertilizers and combustion. It's both natural and man-made. It comes from agriculture, soil management. So those are the main ones that you need to remember. If you remember those, there's other ones too, but those are the main ones, especially carbon dioxide. So sunlight travels through the layers of the atmosphere down to the surface of the Earth. Step one. Actually, step 3. The greenhouse gases in the troposphere trap the heat from the sun and keep the temperature on Earth steady so we don't get too hot, too cold. If we get too many greenhouse gases, we'll turn into Venus. If we get too less, too little, we'll turn into Mars. I think of it that way. Yeah, Mars is really cold on the cold side. It keeps us at a moderate temperature. All right, specifically the infrared part of the electromagnetic spectrum creates the heat that's trapped by the greenhouse gases. So if you remember Roy G. Biv, which is the colors of the rainbow, which is the light that we see, if you go a little bit past the red part, that's infrared. So here's the picture of it. So Roy G. Biv is this way: red, orange, yellow, V is violet. So infrared is right past the visible light spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's where heat comes from. It doesn't come from here.
Yeah.
I think blue and purple is cold.
Yeah, they all come.
Red is hot. So that's where the heat comes from. Right? So greenhouse gases, if kept constant, keep the temperature at a level that supports life on our planet. And we need to have the greenhouse gases to have life. The suggested cause of global warming is due to the increased amount of greenhouse gases in the troposphere. The rise in greenhouse gases and subsequent rise in temperature is due to the following 2 reasons. An increase in greenhouse gases due to increased combustion of fossil fuels and other things like trash and wood. Anything that burns increases greenhouse gases. So it can be a bomb, it could be, something catching fire naturally or artificially. It's going to add carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. A decrease in photosynthesis is also the second reason. So if you increase the number of greenhouse gases and you decrease the number of plants which take in those greenhouse gases, then you're going to have an increase of greenhouse gases overall. So you can either increase the amount or you can decrease the ways that we get rid of it. So decrease plants and photosynthetic organisms, keep the levels of greenhouse gases high, or an increase of creating greenhouse gases will keep it high. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so the excess greenhouse gases in the atmosphere doesn't allow the heat, the infrared, to escape. So you want to think of the global warming as like a blanket of carbon dioxide covering the Earth, like that. So it's like a blanket.
Go and draw that.
Like a cape, like a cover, like a
Yeah.
blanket.
Here's the causes and effects of greenhouse gases. Causes are combustion of fossil fuels, clearing of the forests. Is this in your packet?
Yeah.
There's one of them I think I left off. Combustion of fossil fuels, clearing of forests, growing crops, release carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, respiration of humans and animals. Here's the effects. Altered precipitation patterns, shift areas where we grow crops, raise the sea level due to polar ice cap melting, and shift in habitats for organisms. So they have to move to a different place because they're underwater or it's too hot or something like that. So these are the causes and effects of global warming. So here's another picture of global warming.
I can't see
It
it.
goes in, it's trapped by greenhouse gases.
Look online under.
I can't see it here. Like
You're running take a picture of it, so just look there.
Huh?
Take a picture.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a picture really quick.
Go to Dirk and Julian.
At the end, I'll go back to it.
Thank you.
Remind me.
I don't see how that's
All
wrong.
right, to watch a video on greenhouse effect and how it relates to global warming, go to this website and click video 2. I'm not going to do it now because it's short. It's only like 8 or 9 minutes. But if you want to see a visual, see, I learn things by visual. That's why I show you so many videos. So if you watch it, you're going to get more information out of it. So this is a good one that's pretty all-inclusive that you can watch if you're studying global warming and how it affects, or greenhouse effect and how it affects global warming. That's where you want to go. All right, so that's how greenhouse effect relates to global warming, how global warming works. This is ozone layer depletion, broken down into a simple explanation. So take what I just talked about, put it off to the side. Now we're talking about ozone layer depletion. They're not the same thing. They're actually almost 100% opposite. All right, so in this case, The sun goes through, we're not looking at the troposphere, we're not looking at the blanket, we're looking at this outer layer of the atmosphere, the ozone layer. And there's a hole in it, which is over Antarctica. It just happens that it migrates to over Antarctica. Don't worry about why right now.
Wait, that moves?
It doesn't move around, it just hovers.
Oh.
So in ozone layer depletion, or a hole in the ozone layer, the atmosphere is made of 4 major layers with a small ozone layer, O3. It's actually the lowest part of the stratosphere. So in order from closest to Earth's surface, you've got where we are, the troposphere. This is where greenhouse effect happens. Stratosphere, the ozone layer is the bottom layer of the stratosphere closest to the troposphere, closest to the Earth. So it's in the stratosphere, but it's the bottommost layer of the stratosphere. Then you got the mesosphere, thermosphere, and ionosphere. These really aren't that. These are important.
You're missing the exosphere.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. But there's other layers too. I said major layers. But this is the stuff you need to remember. Stratosphere is ozone layer. Troposphere is greenhouse gases and global warming. All right, ozone layer depletion. Again, I broke it down into like steps. So first, sunlight and other space radiation. It can come from not just the sun, but it can come from stars and other places. Pass through the atmosphere, eventually hitting the surface of the Earth. The ozone layer absorbs the majority of the ultraviolet, not infrared, ultraviolet radiation from the sun. So it's like a force shield. Basically, the O3 are loosely held together. The radiation comes in, breaks it apart for a second, it binds back together. It's supposed to do that. So if you think of, I mean, honestly, the best explanation I can give you is Spaceballs, a movie where they have that force shield around that planet. That's the best visual I can give you. So think of it like that. It's like a force shield around it.
Yeah, didn't Al Gore mention that the hole in the ozone layer is actually kind of one of the things that, with the challenges that we managed to overcome?
Yeah, but it's getting better. But we'll get to that. So a hole has been created over Antarctica, the South Pole, in the ozone layer due to chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. Notice CFCs weren't mentioned in greenhouse gas and global warming. Don't worry about it. It is a greenhouse gas, but don't think of it that way. CFCs contributes to ozone layer depletion. So CFCs go up to the ozone layer, break it apart, and those O3 molecules break into other things, and it breaks down the ozone layer. So ordinarily, the ozone layer is held together by loose bonds between the O3 molecules. They're very volatile. They fall apart really easily. But it just happens where they are. The pressure and temperature keeps them together in a circle around the Earth. So when the UV rays or other types of radiation hit the ozone layer, the O3 break apart into O2 and oxygen by itself. Remember, in chemistry, that's how you remember oxygen. It goes around in a pair. So O2 molecule, that's the normal breathable oxygen. Then the O immediately bonds back to the O2 and creates O3 again. So the force shield around the Earth seals back up, ready to take another hit of radiation. So radiation comes in, the O3s break it, or it hits the O3, it breaks apart, seals back up. That's how it's supposed to work. All right, the O3 molecules are unstable by themselves, but when placed at the right temperature and pressure, they form a strong layer or a force field around the Earth, protecting the Earth from UV and other types of radiation. So we want that. So CFCs and halocarbons were used as aerosol propellants in refrigeration and are actually still used in refrigeration and AC units in buildings today. You won't have them in your car, but older buildings still use Freon for their AC. And they also use halocarbons to make styrofoam. Notice we don't really have styrofoam cups anymore because styrofoam is, one, bad for the environment, two, to create, you got to make these halocarbons, which are bad for the ozone layer. So, and they use ozone for like industrial cleaning. They actually use ozone's a really good air freshener. Actually, sometime in the next 2 weeks I'll show you. I have an ozone generator. It's very bad for the environment, but It creates a lot of ozone and it makes the room smell really good. It smells like a rainstorm.
Mr. Stackhouse, you don't really plan to spraying that, do you?
No, you don't spray it. I'll show it to you later. All right, so when the CFCs or halocarbons are released in the atmosphere, they float up to ozone layer, so they're fairly light. They go up. And then the CFCs reach the ozone layer. But chlorine or fluorine, remember it's chlorofluorocarbon, they break apart the oxygen or the O3 molecule. They leave a lone oxygen ion by itself, so it's a charged particle. And the regular oxygen, the O2, sinks down. We can breathe it. It actually creates more oxygen for us to breathe when you break down the ozone layer, but that's not very much, and it's compared to the negatives, it's not good. So the new chlorine, fluorine, carbon molecule floats down to the Earth, and it breaks apart the ozone layer. So it can no longer bind back together like it did before. So with the ozone layer destroyed, there's nothing to stop the UV radiation from hitting the surface of the Earth and damaging organisms. And UV rays can cause cancer, sunburn, premature aging, death in animals, damaged leaves and plants. And the ban on CFCs has stopped the Antarctic hole in the ozone layer from growing bigger. So that's where you're right. It's actually getting better. That hole is getting smaller. So this we got a hold of. It's because they outlawed CFCs in aerosol propellants, like hairspray bottles. They don't put it in air conditioners anymore. It's reducing the amount of CFCs going to the ozone layer and reducing that hole.
How is it getting smaller if the CFCs fall down? So
We're reducing the amount of CFCs we let out in
how
atmosphere.
do more CFCs get out?
They're lighter than air, kind of like helium.
They float. Okay. Fall down. That's why I'm confused. Gravity doesn't
There's
work that way.
an actual chemical way that it's done. You can look at that. That's a CFC. That's the oxygen O3 molecule. Breaks it apart, binds it, separates it. Here's another picture. Does not create heat. Not related to global warming. Though you get burnt from UV radiation, UV radiation and UV rays aren't hot. They're not really hot. Hot is infrared radiation. They're on the cold or on this side of the electromagnetic spectrum. So it's ultraviolet rays that we're worried about with ozone layer depletion. So it doesn't cause heat. The infrared rays, which were in global warming over there, they did cause heat. So these don't cause heat. They cause sunburn, but they don't cause heat. They cause cancer. So these are the violet side of OEG good. So it's right past the visible part of the light spectrum. So important. The increase in UV radiation does not create heat in general. The hole in the ozone layer has nothing to do with global warming. These are all generalized statements. For your information, that's all you need to know for the AP exam. Global warming and ozone layer depletion are completely different environmental concerns. And the APES exam will ask you questions on these two global concerns. They always do, because they expect people to not really understand the difference. Because people get them confused all the time. So they always ask questions.
Mr. Stackhouse, is it very likely that we'll see something that mixes global warming with the ozone layer? Is it something that we can...
They'll keep them separate. I'm not going to say you're not going to see it, but if you keep them separate, then when you need to connect them together, you can connect them together. But they'll ask you, they'll give you the connection in the question. Yeah.
The ozone layer on carbons and those greenhouse gases affect the ozone?
Nope. In general, don't think they don't. Separate it out.
Mr. Stackhouse, so the UV radiation, we're talking about the rays. I remember the cartoon that we saw in the Outdoors documentary show that basically once the UV radiation entered the Earth's atmosphere, it was trapped by the greenhouse gas. I mean, there's
But you're getting exactly
yeah, I know, that's the
opposite.
confusion, but it's the heat, basically.
No. This doesn't, UV rays don't create heat.
It's not the UV.
You're getting them mixed up. Go back and read what I just gave you. Actually, I'm going to give you a little summary in a second.
Thank you.
Sure. Do you have this? Because I think you don't. You do have it? Okay, good. Greenhouse gas effect, ozone hole. These are two separate entities. So looking at the greenhouse effect, they're caused by greenhouse gases like water, carbon dioxide, methane, nitric oxides. You want to think of this one primarily. They're naturally occurring, human influences, severity. So that's where we're talking. We can make more, but they're natural for the most part. We can increase the amount that these are naturally produced, but you don't like mix something together like chlorofluorocarbons and get these greenhouse gases. It causes troposphere, not stratosphere, to retain heat. UV radiation does not play a part. It's debatable. So it's still a hypothesis. It's not 100%. So people in Congress can still cite stuff that says it's not real. And that's why it's not turned into a theory yet. It's the most likely way that global warming occurs, but it's not 100%.
So yeah, it is heat, not just UV radiation. That's the distinction. That's what you put
That's
there.
this.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
For
retains
green-
heat. Yeah, I know UV radiation isn't.
No part. Not
Okay.
important.
UV radiation.
This is getting worse over time. Greenhouse effect, global warming, it's getting worse. Ozone hole, separate stuff. This is caused by CFCs and halocarbons, mostly man-made, has nothing to do with heat, causes increase in UV radiation. Is a fact, because we're making it better, and it's getting better over time due to the ban on the CFCs. So nothing to do with CFCs, just the greenhouse gases over here, pretty much natural. It's getting worse. This is man-made. It's getting better. CFCs, halocarbons, UV radiation, ultraviolet radiation over here, keep them separate. They're not the same thing.